Perfection is a fantasy. No matter how skilled or meticulous you are, every creation ends up with some imperfections sneaking through. I came to grips with that idea during my time at art school. No matter how much effort we poured into our work, there was always something the critics could pick apart. It wasn't long before all that constant scrutiny drained the joy I once had for art, leaving me with a pretty bleak outlook on everything. I thought I'd lost my passion for good, until I found perfection in her. She came into my world like a streak of vibrant color cutting through gray skies. It's almost no exaggeration to say she brought rainbows with her. I was sitting in class one day, half paying attention as the professor laid into another student's sketch, when the door suddenly flew open. In walked a young woman, breathless and looking like she'd just sprinted across campus. Her short blonde hair was a bit messy, and she wore jeans and a white tank top that showed off her arms, which were nearly covered in vivid tattoos. "Sorry, give me a second, sorry I'm late," she gasped, barely managing to get the words out. "Missed the bus, overslept, but I'm here." Her entrance was so chaotic it drew chuckles from the class. The professor, however, wasn't amused and quickly redirected their irritation toward her. The woman introduced herself as Eva, a late addition to our program, even though it was well past the typical enrollment period. That alone made her stand out, but everything about her was different, captivatingly so. Eva had this carefree, eccentric vibe that made it easy to picture her living by the motto live, laugh, love. But despite her quirky demeanor, she was deeply serious about her art. And her talent? It was something else entirely. Her paintings were stunning, her sculptures had a way of commanding attention, and the tattoos decorating her skin were like tiny masterpieces. She designed and inked most of them herself, each one more intricate and breathtaking than the last. I didn't believe in perfection until Eva showed up. At first, I thought she and I couldn't have been more different. She seemed like a carefree whirlwind, and I was just, well, me. But then one day, she completely surprised me. "That's cute," came a voice right next to my ear, startling me so much I almost dropped my pencil. I turned to find Eva leaning over, her face close to mine, her eyes locked onto the little doodle of a lizard I'd been sketching in the margins of my notebook. "I really like it," she said, her smile warm and genuine. "What a pretty snake." I almost corrected her, "It's a lizard, not a snake," but instead, I just laughed nervously. "No, seriously," she insisted. "It's adorable. I've got this perfect little spot on my arm where it would fit." She rolled up her sleeve and pointed to a blank patch of skin between two of her vibrant tattoos. Thanks, but it's nothing special," I said, still a little stunned by the attention. "Oh, stop it," she said, waving off my modesty. "I've seen your other stuff, and it's amazing. Give yourself some credit." I couldn't help but blush. The fact that she'd noticed my work at all was enough to leave me floored. "Thanks," I muttered, not sure what else to say. Her smile widened even more. "Don't mention it. Seeing great art like yours makes me want to create more." She pulled out her phone, snapped a quick picture of my doodle, and started walking toward the door. Just before leaving, she turned back and asked casually, "Hey, you doing anything tonight?" It was a Friday, and I didn't have any plans, so I told her no. "Great," she said. "Come over to my place. Let's hang out." I didn't even hesitate. I said yes, and before I knew it, we were exchanging numbers and making plans. As soon as classes ended for the day, I went home and got ready. I spent way too much time picking out an outfit, trying not to overthink things, and finally headed out. Following the directions she'd texted me, I ended up in a part of town near the college bars. Her address led me to an old brick building that looked like it hadn't been updated in decades. The windows and doors at the front were boarded up, and the whole place had an almost abandoned vibe to it. My phone buzzed with a message, "Come on in." I hesitated for a moment, unsure if I was at the right place, when I heard a loud PSSST. Looking toward the sound, I saw Eva peeking out from behind the building. "Over here," she called, motioning for me to follow her. I walked over and found her standing by a large metal door tucked away on the side of the building. With a grin, she opened it wide and gestured for me to step inside. With a groan of effort, Eva swung the heavy metal door open, and we stepped inside. Behind us, the door closed with a loud clunk, and I couldn't help but freeze in awe at what lay before me. The room was softly illuminated by strings of warm yellow lights that lined the walls, giving everything a cozy glow. Every inch of space seemed to be alive with creativity. Paintings, sketches, and small sculptures were scattered all around. "Wow," I blurted out. "You actually live here?" Eva plopped herself down in a chair tucked into the corner of the room and smiled. "Sure do. Sold a bunch of my work, and it covers the rent just fine," she said with a casual shrug. "Make yourself at home," she added as she switched on a small lamp. "I just need a minute to finish this up." I wandered around the room, letting my eyes linger on her creations. There was such variety: portraits of people, detailed sketches of animals, vivid landscapes. Every piece seemed to tell its own story, and I couldn't help but marvel at the sheer talent and passion that radiated from her work. Suddenly, a loud bzzz filled the room, jolting me out of my admiration. I turned to see Eva sitting with a tattoo gun in hand, the needle buzzing as she worked on a patch of bare skin on her left arm. I stood frozen, watching her in fascination. Her expression was unlike anything I'd seen from her before: intense, focused, and completely unyielding. Small beads of blood welled up on her skin as the needle moved, but she didn't even flinch. Her eyes seemed distant, almost unblinking, as if she were in some kind of trance. The air in the room felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the atmosphere itself had shifted. I tried to shake off the uneasy feeling, telling myself I was imagining things. 10 minutes passed before the buzzing stopped, and just like that, Eva's serious demeanor melted away. "All done," she declared with a grin, her cheerful energy flooding back into the room. The weight I'd felt lifted immediately, and I let out a breath I didn't even realize I'd been holding. "What's the matter?" she asked, her tone light and teasing. Before I could assure her everything was fine, she quickly added, "Sorry for keeping you waiting." Her smile was back, so infectious that I couldn't help but laugh. Still, I couldn't get over the stark contrast between the serious, focused Eva I'd just seen and the carefree, bubbly one I'd grown used to. It was the first time I realized there was so much more to her than she let on. After cleaning her arm, she turned to me with a triumphant smile and held it out. There, on her freshly wrapped skin, was the tattoo she'd just finished, my little doodle from earlier. "Ta-da," she said, beaming. "It's perfect." I couldn't help but chuckle at her enthusiasm. "Looks great," I said, and she flashed me an even bigger grin. Once her arm was cleaned and wrapped in plastic, she hopped up and grabbed my hand. "All right, my treat tonight," she announced, dragging me out of the studio and toward the lively downtown area. Our destination was a bar called Rowdy's, a brick building with a weathered sign hanging over the entrance. "After you, milady," Eva teased with a playful smirk. Rolling my eyes, I pushed the door open, and we were immediately hit with a wave of sound. The place was alive with noise, the thrum of music, the buzz of conversation, and the occasional clinking of glasses. The air was thick with the smell of alcohol and cigarette smoke, and neon lights bathed everything in an otherworldly glow. Eva nudged me forward with her hand on my back. The floor beneath my shoes was sticky, but the energy of the crowd was electric. A guitar solo blared from the speakers, the kind of classic rock my dad used to play around the house. I didn't have much time to take in the sights before I felt something cold press against my cheek. I turned to find Eva handing me a cold beer, a mischievous glint in her eye. Before I could even take a sip, she grabbed my hand and pulled me into the thick of the crowd. Soon, we were laughing and shouting along to "Don't Stop Believing" by Journey, our voices lost in the sea of noise. For a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. That night marked the beginning of something special. Eva and I became inseparable after that, and our weekly trips to Rowdy's became a cherished ritual. It wasn't just a bar anymore, it felt like a second home, a place where I could unwind and forget about the stresses of school. But everything changed after I met him. From that moment on, I couldn't even step foot inside Rowdy's without falling apart. The once comforting smells and sounds now haunted me, and the memories of what we'd shared were too painful to bear. It started like any other night. After classes, I headed over to Eva's place, and we got ready together before walking out to Rowdy's. When we arrived, the bar was buzzing with energy, and a woman was on stage belting out a Chris Stapleton song, her voice raw and powerful. The crowd cheered her on, and as soon as she finished, I grabbed Eva's hand and dragged her up to the stage. "You ready for this?" I teased, grinning. Eva smirked back. "Always." The opening piano notes of "Don't Stop Believin'" filled the room, and we both took deep breaths before belting out the lyrics. Eva's voice soared on the high notes while I backed her up with my deeper tones. We gave it everything we had, throwing in some goofy dance moves and ridiculous air guitar flourishes. By the time we finished, the crowd erupted into applause. Laughing and breathless, we stumbled off the stage and headed to the bar for a couple of beers. That's when the next song started. The mood in the bar shifted as soon as the haunting piano notes of "Karma Police" by Radiohead came on. The energy softened, and all eyes turned to the stage. There he was, holding the mic with both hands, his eyes closed as he poured his soul into the lyrics. His voice was rich with emotion, and he sang like he was channeling something far beyond himself. At first, he seemed unremarkable, just another guy taking his turn at karaoke. But then, as the chorus hit, he opened his eyes, and I felt the air leave my lungs. His irises were the most stunning shade of emerald green I'd ever seen, vivid and piercing. For a moment, it felt like they locked onto mine, and it was as though I were sinking into quicksand. I glanced at Eva, and it was clear she was just as mesmerized. Her gaze never left him, her usual carefree demeanor replaced by something almost reverent. When his song ended, he disappeared into the crowd, but not before stealing one last glance in our direction. Eva craned her neck, searching for him in the mass of bodies, but I tugged her arm, pulling her focus back to me. "Come on. Let's grab a shot before I crush you at pool," I said, trying to break the spell. She smirked, brushing her hair back. "You're on." At the pool table, I took a sip of my beer while Eva set up the game. That's when he appeared again, strolling over with a confident smile and plopping himself down on the edge of the table. "Hey," he said, raising his voice over the noise. "You two killed it up there. Can't go wrong with Journey." Eva's cheeks flushed as she brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "Oh my God, thanks. I was just about to say, Radiohead is so badass." He chuckled, leaning in slightly. "The trick is finding a song so weird, you can't mess it up even if you try." I took a seat on a nearby stool, beer in hand, watching the exchange like a front-row spectator to some awkward mating ritual. The tension between them was thick, almost tangible. "You, wanna play?" Eva asked, her tone carrying just the right mix of playfulness and challenge. He hesitated for a moment, then glanced at me. "Aren't you playing with your friend?" I raised my bottle and shrugged. "Kick her ass, man," I said before taking a long sip, already feeling invisible. By the end of the night, they'd exchanged numbers. What started as the two of us hanging out soon became the three of us, and then it was just Eva and him. At first, I didn't mind. Eva still tried to include me, making sure I wasn't left out. But there was something about him that unsettled me. The way he seemed to command attention, the way he effortlessly became the center of her world. I hated how he'd wormed his way into her life so quickly, threatening the perfect friendship we'd built. I started seeing less and less of Eva. I'd try to catch her after class, but she'd rush off, always saying she had plans with him. Weeks passed before I finally managed to pin her down for a conversation. "Hey. What's going on? We haven't talked in forever," I said, my frustration bubbling over. She looked at me, almost startled. "Oh, sorry. I've just been hanging out with Austin," she mumbled, her voice barely audible. "Listen, I've gotta run." I told him I'd meet him after class. It wasn't just her words that alarmed me, it was how she looked. Her usually bright eyes were dull, framed by dark bags. Her hair was messy, and when she shifted, I caught a glimpse of her arms. My stomach dropped. There were bruises. "Eva," I reached for her hand and lifted it gently. Small purple marks peeked out from beneath her tattoos. My chest tightened. "What the hell is this?" She yanked her arm back, her voice trembling. "And nothing. Is he hurting you?" I demanded, anger rising in my throat. Her eyes widened. No. No, it's not that. Everything's fine. Really. I've just been working through some things. I didn't believe her, not for a second. But the way she looked at me, pleading, desperate, I didn't know what to say. "Where is he?" I asked, my voice firm. "I need to talk to him." "No," she said, grabbing my hand with surprising strength. Her grip was so tight it made me wince. "It's not what you think. I swear. I did this to myself, okay?" Her words hit me like a gut punch. The anger drained out of me, replaced by an overwhelming sadness. "Eva," I whispered, my voice barely audible. She looked so fragile, so broken. I wanted to protect her, to fix whatever was happening. But all I could do was pull her into a hug, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Please, just promise me you'll tell me if anything's wrong." She nodded against my shoulder, and I let myself believe her. I thought everything would go back to normal. I wanted to believe it so badly. After that day, Eva stopped showing up to school. I tried calling her, texting her, leaving messages, but she wouldn't answer. She just vanished. I hoped to find her at Rowdy's, but no one there had seen her in weeks. Standing outside the bar, the muffled music spilling through the closed doors tugged at my chest, reminding me of the good times we used to have. I glanced down the street toward her place, the thought striking me suddenly, maybe she was home. Maybe if I could just talk to her, even for a moment, I could convince her to come back, to me, to herself, to the way things used to be. I rushed over, my heart pounding with urgency. Her building loomed in the dark, and I found myself at the back door, hesitating. I knocked a couple of times, the sound echoing in the silence. "Eva? Hey, are you in there?" I called out. Nothing. I banged harder, pressing my ear against the door. That's when I heard it, a faint sound, almost a moan, like someone in pain. "Eva! I hear you. Are you okay?" I shouted, panic rising in my chest. I tried the handle, and to my surprise, it turned. The door creaked open, heavy and reluctant, before slamming shut behind me as I stepped inside. Her place was dimly lit, the once charming glow of string lights now casting eerie shadows across the room. And then I saw it. In the middle of the room stood a gray statue, its figure unmistakably human. My heart sank as I moved closer. My hand brushed its surface, cold, smooth cement. It was a man's body, sculpted in agonizing detail. Muscles rippled beneath the gray, almost lifelike. But then I reached the face. It was haunting. The features were barely there, blurred as if smoothed away intentionally. Where the mouth should have been was a gaping hole, dark and empty. But it was the eyes that sent chills racing through me, two vivid pools of emerald green that stared back, unblinking. The same green eyes that had pulled Eva, and me, into their quicksand depths. As I moved, the eyes followed me. "Help, me," the words were faint, croaking from the statue's mouth, and a horrific stench hit me like a wall. I stumbled back, gagging. "What do you think?" Eva's voice, calm and cold, came from behind me. I spun around to see her standing there, her expression devoid of the warmth I once knew. "Eva, what the hell did you do?" I managed to choke out. She stepped closer, her movements deliberate, her eyes as hollow as the statue's. "He tried to leave me," she said, her voice low and measured. "Just a couple of weeks after we started talking. Can you believe that? Why would he want to leave me?" I backed away, my mind racing. "Is that him?" I whispered, motioning toward the statue. The statue groaned, its chest heaving faintly, and something vile began to ooze from the mouth, a mix of human excrement and vomit. The putrid smell filled the room, making my stomach lurch. Eva's lips curled into a chilling smile. "He said I was too much. That he wanted to see other people. But I didn't want to see anyone else. I wanted him to see me. Only me." Her voice broke into a sharp hiss. "And now, he's perfect. He's mine forever. Eva, this is insane. We need to call for help. An ambulance, no, the police." I shouted, stepping back toward the door. Her expression twisted with rage. "No," she screamed, grabbing a ruler from a nearby table and striking her own arms, leaving angry red marks. "Eva, stop!" I pleaded, trying to reach her. But she dropped the ruler and grabbed a tattoo gun, the buzz of its needle cutting through the tense air. She crossed the room in a flash, bringing it up to my neck. I screamed, grappling with her as the needle pierced my skin. Pain exploded in my throat as I pushed her wrist with all my strength, managing to shove her away. Blood trickled down my chest as I stumbled, kicking the tattoo gun across the floor. Eva lunged at me again, her hands clawing for my throat. We struggled, crashing into the statue behind us. The cement figure toppled with a deafening thud, shattering on the ground. Eva let out a blood-curdling shriek as the pieces scattered, revealing a man underneath, weak, trembling, but alive. Before I could react, Eva was on top of me, a chunk of concrete in her hands. "You ruined everything," she howled, bringing it down toward my head. I raised my arms to block the blow, a sickening crack echoing as pain shot through my bones. My strength gave out, and my arms fell limp. I looked up at her, the madness in her bloodshot eyes searing into me. But then, there was a grunt. A heavy piece of concrete struck Eva's head from behind, and she collapsed to the floor. Austin, barely standing, was the one who saved me. He crumpled moments later, and I scrambled to call the police. Eva was arrested, though her parents tried everything to get her out. Austin's family fought just as hard to make sure justice was served. I testified, reliving every horrible moment to help put her away. I loved Eva once, she was my best friend. I thought she was perfect, someone who could never truly break. But I was blind to the darkness beneath her surface, and in the end, I had to let her go.